Welcome back to The Deep Dive. Today, we're really trying to get under the skin of a life just filled with, well, astounding contradictions and this unwavering conviction. Imagine starting life on a Korean farm, having visions, ending up imprisoned multiple times, but then inspiring a global movement. A movement aiming for nothing less than world peace. Our deep dive today is into the remarkable and, let's be honest, often controversial journey of Reverend Sun Moon.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, especially for you listening, is looking at how his actual experiences, these intense spiritual quest, the severe persecution he faced, how they didn't just happen to him, they actively shaped his teachings, his entire vision.
Right.
So digging into the biography you've shared, pulling out the key insights to understand the man, behind the movement, what really drove him towards this idea of global peace and family values.
Absolutely. And this isn't just going to be a list of dates. For you, the curious learner, we're exploring those really pivotal moments, the huge challenges he faced, and maybe some surprising facts that made his story so unique. It helps you understand how someone could spark both such intense devotion and, at the same time, such fierce opposition. So, okay, let's go back, way back to the beginning. Our source paints this picture of Reverend Moon's, well, pretty humble origins. Born January 6, 1920, farming family in Korea, studied at a Confucian school, apparently quite observant even as a kid, watching nature. Then there's this shift around 1930.
The family coverts.
Yeah, to Presbyterian Christianity, and he becomes a Sunday school teacher. But what was the world like around him then? That context seems crucial.
Oh, absolutely crucial. It was incredibly turbulent. You have to remember, Korea was under Japanese rule, really oppressive. Imagine, only Shintoism was allowed officially. 40 years of what the source calls humiliation and cruelty. And this, it says, taught the young Moon the pain of injustice.
Wow, that early.
Yeah. It's presented as a really formative experience, a crucible, you could say.
Yeah.
It clearly fueled his awareness of suffering, human suffering, and it pushed him to look for solutions beyond the religions he already knew.
So that injustice really lit a fire under him. He starts searching, praying, studying, because he saw this gap, right, between religious ideals and the harsh reality.
Exactly. And that leads us to what's described as the turning point. Easter morning, 1935, he's praying in the mountains, apparently.
Yep, this is the vision.
This is the vision. Jesus Christ appears to him, it's recounted, and asks him basically to continue his work, to establish God's kingdom on earth and bring peace to humankind.
That's quite a mission.
An overwhelming mission, as the text calls it. And apparently he initially refused. He was stunned. Understandable, really. But then after deep thought, meditation, prayer, he pledges himself to it, accepts this overwhelming mission, clearly a life-defining moment.
You'd say that again. A commitment that shaped everything after.
Yeah,
so,
right.
okay, from 1935 to 46, he's working on what becomes the divine principle. What did that actually look like, this quest for truth?
Well, it was intense. He dove deep into the Bible, other religious texts, trying to unravel what he called the mysteries of life and human history. The source describes it almost like a battleground, a vast battlefield of the spirit and flesh, overcoming temptations, trying to grasp God's perspective. A key idea that emerges is his understanding of God's own suffering, his longing to reconnect with humanity, his children, and figuring out the difficult steps needed for that reunion.
And his method for figuring this out, it sounds quite systematic.
It does. He would posit specific questions, then research answers both physically and spiritually, and then seek confirmation through prayer. It's presented as a very deliberate process.
That is fascinating, almost like spiritual research. And then there's this element of direct spiritual guidance he apparently received.
Yes, this is quite extraordinary. The material says he was guided by figures like Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, saints and sages from, all faiths, meeting him in spirit.
What does that tell us about the vision he was forming?
It points to something really expansive right from the start, a kind of syncretic approach, trying to weave together wisdom from many different traditions, not just sticking within one box. And by the time he was 25, he developed the fundamentals of the divine principle and unification principles.
So the core ideas were there. What are those core ideas briefly? The divine principle.
Well, in essence, the idea is that God originally intended humanity to live in a perfect state, like one big family. But something went wrong the fall, leading to separation from God and all the suffering we see. Moon's mission, as he saw it, was to basically fulfill God's original plan, to restore that connection and establish a world based on true love, centered on ideal families.
Okay, so a comprehensive worldview, really, not just beliefs. And this quest didn't stop even when he went to Japan to study electronic engineering. From 41 to 43.
Nope. Apparently he carried 3 Bibles with him: Korean, English, Japanese, studying constantly. But this period wasn't just spiritual, it was also when he first directly encountered political oppression.
Ah, right, his involvement in the Korean independence movement.
Exactly, against the Japanese occupation. And interestingly, he apparently defended communists to his Christian friends, not because he agreed with their ideology, but he saw their dedication, their sincerity for an ideal, even if misguided. This led to his first imprisonment, tortured by the Japanese because he wouldn't name collaborators. The first, as the source says, of 6 imprisonments under 4 different governments.
6 times. Incredible. He goes back to Korea in 43, marries Sung-il Choi, then gets arrested and tortured again by the Japanese in 44.
Yes, just brutal experiences, which makes his actions after the war even more striking.
You mean the compassion he showed?
Right. After all that suffering, the source says he showed only love and respect to Japanese people, persuaded others not to seek revenge, even helped Japanese officials get safe passage home.
That level of forgiveness, it speaks volumes, doesn't it, about his core philosophy and practice.
It really does. A profound commitment to love and reconciliation, even after immense personal pain. So in 1945, his public ministry begins. But it wasn't easy. His new revelations weren't welcomed by the established Korean Christian churches. American missionaries apparently dismissed him as just an unschooled country preacher. Korean ministers accused him of false teachings.
So immediate resistance.
Yeah. He quickly realized, as the text puts it, he was on a lonely path of a pioneer religious visionary.
And that lonely path took him somewhere incredibly dangerous next. In 1946, he feels this calling again to leave his family and go preach in communist North Korea, specifically Pyongyang,
Yeah.
which was known then as the Jerusalem of the East. Apparently, there were strong messianic expectations there, but think about the timing.
Yeah, new preacher with new ideas in a brand new communist state. That sounds risky. Extremely risky. He was poor, vulnerable. And sure enough, November 46, he's imprisoned. The charge, disturbing the social order, tortured so badly, the police left him for dead.
Left him for dead.
That's what the source says. But somehow, miraculously, he survives, recovers. And what does he do? Goes right back to preaching.
That resilience is just astounding. Absolute dedication.
But the persecution wasn't over. April 1948, arrested again. This time, sentenced to 5 years hard labor in Hungnam prison, described as an extermination camp.
An extermination camp where prisoners were deliberately worked to death. How did he possibly survive almost 3 years there?
It's almost unimaginable. But he did survive. And what's remarkable is that even though he wasn't openly preaching the divine principle there, other prisoners started looking to him for spiritual strength, became his disciples, just through his example, his spirit.
So even in the absolute worst conditions, then comes the liberation. June 1950, North Korea invades the South. UN forces are advancing.
And they reach Hungnam just as prisoners are being executed. The timing is incredible. He was liberated, the source states, just hours before Reverend Moon's scheduled execution.
Hours. That's chilling. But his actions after liberation are maybe even more telling. He didn't just run south for safety.
No. He spent 40 days searching for his followers, his scattered flock. Then, the journey south, on foot. There's this detail about him carrying a follower who had a broken leg, or pushing him on a bicycle.
That level of commitment to his people, it's extraordinary. Really shows that pastoral side.
Absolutely. It paints a picture of deep care for his community, even at great personal risk. So he arrives in Busan, a refugee. And with just one disciple, they literally build the first unification church out of scrap materials, discarded army ration boxes.
From ration boxes to predicting global pilgrimages to that spot.
Yeah, he made these prophecies back then, global evangelization, people making pilgrimages there. It sounded unbelievable at the time, the biography said, but now it claims tens of thousands of people fulfill that prophecy.
A testament to his vision, certainly. But his personal life continued to be challenging during this time, right? Rejoining his wife.
Yes, after his imprisonment, he rejoined his wife, Sung-il Choi. But it was difficult. The source says she couldn't fully accept his total dedication to his mission. She eventually filed for divorce, which he opposed. It does note, though, that their child from this marriage and that family remain loyal followers.
Another layer of sacrifice, then. So May 1st, 1954, in Seoul, this is the official founding.
That's the date. The Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity, soon known simply as the Unification Church. But founding it brought immediate opposition.
How so?
Well, the church started attracting students, even professors, from Ewha University, which is a big deal, prominent school linked to the government, mainline Protestant groups. This connection sparked persecution from the university itself.
And the media got involved, too.
Right alongside it, alarming stories started appearing in Seoul newspapers. Sensational stuff, sex orgies, accusations of being a North Korean agent.
Wow. Familiar accusations, almost.
Very familiar. He was arrested, thrown in jail, released weeks later, no charges, then jailed again the next year, accused of evading the military draft.
But wasn't he in Hongnan prison during that time?
Exactly. The charges were eventually dropped. But the source points this out as the beginning of a pattern of collusion. Religious leaders, government, media, all seemingly working together to suppress him and his church.
It highlights that resistance new movements often face, doesn't it?
Definitely. But despite all this, the community grew, became known as the Weeping Church, because their prayers were apparently so tearful and fervent. By 1957, they had churches in 30 Korean cities. And then, a really key step. 1958 sends the first missionary to Japan. 1959, the first to the United States. The global vision was already in motion.
And then 1960 marks another significant personal event, his marriage to Hak Jahan Moon.
Yes, the biography consistently emphasizes her devotion, how she stood by him through everything. They had 14 children, over 40 grandchildren eventually. What was her role early on?
Initially, she seems to have been that crucial partner, the bedrock for the family, providing essential spiritual support. Her public role really expanded later on.
But having that stability allowed him to push forward. First World Tour in 1965, 40 nations. Then, in 1968, he founds the International Federation for Victory Over Communism, IFVOC.
Victory over communism. What was his angle here? Was it purely political?
His teaching was specific. Communism shouldn't be fought with weapons, primarily. It should be defeated ideologically, through education showing the fallacies of Marxism-Leninism, and he offered a counterproposal, Godism.
Godism. Okay, unpack that a bit. What did that mean in practice?
Well, Godism was basically his worldview put forward as an alternative, centered on God as a loving parent, focusing on true family values. It was designed as a direct philosophical challenge to communism's atheism and materialism. It emphasized individual dignity, family, a moral framework. The focus was on winning hearts and minds, not just battles.
An ideological battleground. And this seems to lead directly to his move to the U.S. in 1971.
It seems so. He saw America as key, representing the world, but felt it had drifted from its original ideals. So, he launches the Day of Hope speaking tour in '72. 7 major U.S. cities. The goal: reviving traditional Judeo-Christian values.
And the response in America, how quickly did things move?
Incredibly fast. By the end of '72, they had unification church centers in all 50 states. Thousands of young people were joining. This led to huge rallies, 25,000 people at Madison Square Garden in '74. He spoke in every state. The momentum was undeniable.
Until that really controversial moment in '74, meeting President Nixon during Watergate.
Yeah, that was a huge flashpoint. He urged Americans to forgive, love, and unite around Nixon, which, as the source says, virtually no one was willing to do then with impeachment looming.
Why take such an unpopular stance?
The explanation given is that Reverend Moon saw long-term dangers. He worried about undercutting the American presidency, especially during the Cold War, the communist threat. He was thinking about national stability beyond the immediate scandal. But politically, it was explosive, and it really shifted how he was perceived. The media coverage became much more hostile after that. He became, as the source puts it, an easy target.
How so? What kind of attacks?
Old allegations from Korea resurfaced. Then came the brainwashing narrative portraying him as a hypnotist, an agent of a foreign government. It echoes the pattern seen in Korea, but now on a much bigger stage.
So intense persecution starts in America. But his global work didn't slow down.
Not at all. May 1975, he sends missionary teams, Japanese, American, German members out to 120 countries simultaneously. A massive expansion. Later that year, back in Seoul, that huge rally on Yeouido Island, 1.2 million people, delivering this strong anti-communist message, calling for a world centered on God, right at the peak of the Cold War.
And he's also building infrastructure for his movement, like the seminary.
Right. The Unification Theological Seminary, UTS, founded in '75, accredited ecumenical graduate school, broad curriculum, designed to train leaders. And crucially, from '75 onwards, he really ramps up his interreligious work, promoting dialogue, cooperation between faiths to tackle global problems.
That interfaith aspect seems really important to his later work.
It becomes central. The 1985 Assembly of the World's Religions, with 1,000 leaders, is a key example. His core belief: the world's toughest problems need religious leaders working together, across faiths.
He kept a high profile in the U.S., too. That Washington Monument rally in '76.
The God Bless America Festival. Huge crowd, 300,000 people. He called on America to fulfill its destiny, create one world under God. Called himself a doctor or a firefighter trying to help America fight God-denying communism.
And grassroots initiatives, too, like home church.
Yeah, the home church movement started in '78. Basically, members would adopt a small neighborhood, around 360 homes, and just serve the people there, building community from the ground up. And then in 1982, another big move, founding the Washington Times newspaper.
The Washington Times, what was the goal there?
Initially, the source says, it was intended to help bring about the peaceful fall of communism. Later, its focus shifted more towards promoting family values and the role of religion in society.
But despite all this activity, religious, social media, the U.S. government starts investigating him heavily.
Intensely. Starting around 1983, under political pressure apparently, nearly 20 federal agencies involved in investigations. It all led to this IRS indictment for tax evasion.
It's one for less than $8,000.
Exactly. An amount the source calls unprecedentedly small for that kind of charge against a major religious figure. The suggestion is the real purpose was just to get him to leave the U.S.
But he refused to leave, even when his lawyers advised him to stay in Korea.
He absolutely refused, said, "I will not abandon my mission in America." Pleaded not guilty. But despite dozens of amicus briefs supporting him from mainline Christian leaders, legal groups, civil liberties organizations, the Supreme Court wouldn't hear the case. He was convicted, sentenced to 18 months.
And he even refused a deal to avoid prison if he just left the U.S. permanently.
Yeah. He reportedly said, "It must be God's will that I go to prison." That conviction really galvanized support. Widespread protests. Top religious leaders Jerry Falwell, Joseph Lowery spoke out, saying the government had seriously overstepped attacking religious freedom.
Wasn't there a Senate report about this?
Yes, a U.S. Senate subcommittee report in 1984 was quite critical of the prosecution, said injustice rather than justice has been served. Pointed out he was convicted for things many other religious leaders commonly did. The report warned the case sent a strong signal that unpopular views could lead to conviction, not tolerance. It became a major religious freedom case.
So he goes to Danbury Federal Prison in '84, his sixth imprisonment.
His sixth, and apparently he quickly won the respect of fellow inmates. He served 13 months. When he was released, prominent Christian and civil rights leaders were there denouncing the persecution. It seems the experience ultimately solidified his resolve and even broadened his support base in some ways.
It's quite the turnaround. So moving into the later part of his life, post-prison, we see this shift towards global reconciliation.
A very significant shift. 1990, he meets Mikhail Gorbachev in Moscow. Fulfilling a pledge he'd made way back in '76, he urged the Soviet people to turn toward God. And the source make that important distinction again. Strong opponent of communist ideology, but love for the communist people.
And then the truly astonishing trip in 1991, going to North Korea to meet Kim Il-sung.
Yes, the leader of the regime under which he'd been tortured in Hunnam. It sounds incredibly risky, almost unbelievable.
What was his stated reason for going?
To seek ways to bridge the gap between the two countries. And amazingly, he was welcomed, allowed to visit his hometown, his parents' graves. It's presented as this extraordinary act of reconciliation, putting peace above his own past suffering.
Truly remarkable. And around this time, Mrs. Hak Ja-han-moon steps into a much more public role.
Very much so. She founds the International Women's Federation for World Peace in 1992, undertakes major global speaking tours, becomes recognized, as the source puts it, as one of the most effective women leaders in the world.
Her increased visibility seems to coincide with a shift in the movement's focus, too.
It does. In 1996, the Unification Church officially becomes the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. The emphasis shifts clearly towards happy marriage and successful families as the cornerstone for solving society's problems. A more universal, family-focused message.
He continues founding organizations, too, right? Like the IIFWP.
Yes, in 1999, the International and Interreligious Federation for World Peace, which later became the Universal Peace Federation, UPF, advocating for an international council of religious, civic, political leaders to work alongside the UN for peace.
And his response to 9/11?
Was immediate action on the interreligious front, organizing conferences to address conflict between religions, including one specifically for international Muslim leaders, held in Indonesia, showing that continued engagement across faiths.
These later initiatives seem incredibly ambitious. Middle East Peace Initiative, the Bering Strait Tunnel Project.
Grand visions, absolutely, aimed at tangible peace building. And the sources stress that this work is being carried on now through multiple generations of the Moon family, children, grandchildren involved in global peace tours, his son Hyung-jin, with a Harvard divinity background but practicing Korean Buddhism, engaging in interreligious dialogue.
And finally, the Cheonjeonggung Peace Palace in Korea opened in 2006, a physical symbol of that lifelong vision.
Exactly. Envisioned as a global conference center for world leaders, a kind of culmination point for his focus on peace and unity. So if we try to, pull this all together, Reverend Moon's life, as laid out in these sources, it's just this intense story, profound spiritual conviction, yes, but also this relentless drive for peace, facing incredible opposition, both personal and institutional, along the way. There's a really unique mix of spiritual revelation, social action, and frankly, massive global organization building.
So, for you, our listener, what's the big takeaway here? This deep dive really illustrates how one person's journey, shaped by these extraordinary visions, immense suffering, but also this unwavering dedication, how that can actually fuel a global movement. A movement with this singular focus on one world under God, pursued through interreligious work and family values, often against tremendous odds.
And it leaves us with a pretty big question, doesn't it? When new movements like this emerge, spiritual or social, especially with ideas that seem radical or challenging, how do societies tend to react? Does Reverend Moon's story show us a kind of recurring pattern in how pioneering religious movements are born and grow? And what might that tell us about our own ability, maybe our own willingness, to understand and accept new ideas, even when they carry this powerful message of peace and unity? Something to think about.